The No Kings protest last weekend, get this, might have been the largest single-day demonstration in American history. Okay, so some data analysts using local press coverage as well as tallies of crowd counts, remember there's like 2,000 sites, have tried to aggregate it all together, painstakingly running the numbers, and produced an estimate that 4 to 6 million people turned out across the country. And I think that number and where it stands in the record books is probably shocking to anyone who has been looking at American mainstream news coverage, which has basically covered these massive demonstrations with a shrug, one-day story. Not my colleague Rachel Maddow, who has been so great at covering these nationwide protests during Donald Trump's second term. Rachel and her team gathered so much of this amazing footage from last weekend, she was able to show the all-too-rare 20 box of protests on one screen at the same time. The fact remains that mobilizing that many people in small towns and big cities and everything in between across the country almost never happens. Can't say it enough. But there is enormous activation happening right now. Ezra Levin is a co-founder and co-executive director of Indivisible, which is one of the leading organizations that coordinated the No Kings protest last weekend, and he joins me now. Ezra, I don't love to do media criticism because at some level it's like I am the media, so just, do rather than criticize. But I will ask you this. Do you feel like the national discourse or the coverage was commensurate with what now appear to be like possibly record-setting numbers?
Look, Chris, the fact that you're having to cover this and say, hey, did you see this in the news is a good sign that the mainstream media is not covering it. What we saw all over the country, 2,169 local events, not just in the big city centers, not just in New York and Chicago, but also in Homer, Alaska, in Winnebago, Wisconsin, in small red areas and rural areas, people were showing up. So whether you were watching the mainstream media or not, you saw this with your own eyes. You heard this from your neighbors, and an increasing number of people are hearing it from non-mainstream media sources. So folks like Jen Rubin's The Contrarian and Midas Touch and Politics Girl and Aaron Parnas, some of these influencers and creators, an increasing number of people who aren't seeing their own lived experience represented in mainstream media are turning to these other sources where they are covering what's on the ground. And whether mainstream media cover it or not, I think it's undeniable what the impact has been. Millions and millions of new people getting engaged on the ground where they are.
What is your vision and other folks who are organizing around this for what the goal was here and what now comes afterwards? I think you nailed it, right? I mean, there was not a dud. It wasn't like, oh, no one came. It seems to have been very successful. What does that do to folks now?
Look, even a historically enormous one-day protest is an historically enormous one-day protest. No individual protest, no individual march, no individual tactic is suddenly going to save democracy or convince Donald Trump to stop steamrolling over the public. So I think you're hitting on something which is really important. What next? And I'll point to three things. One reason why this protest was as large as it was because of this enormous blowback to the militarization of LA, the escalation of deportation forces in that city and elsewhere. It should come as no surprise that that's deeply unpopular. If you are on the ground, you know that's deeply unpopular. But a lot of people came out for No King's Day in response to LA. What people might not understand is LA was a rehearsal. It is a rehearsal. He would love to send these deportation forces and militarize blue states and cities across the country. He doesn't have the money for it yet. But Congress is working to get him that money in the form of this reconciliation bill that's moving forward. They're asking for $150 billion for ICE. They're asking to hire 10,000 new ICE agents in order to terrorize American cities. People don't like that. And the good news is it's not a foregone conclusion. So one immediate action coming out of this is funneling millions of new people to prevent the replication of the LA escalation all across the country. Beyond that, look, we got to recognize Congress isn't the only actor in this game. We launched earlier this week something we've called 1 Million Rising, which is an effort to train up people all around the country on how they can focus on their universities, their media institutions, their businesses, the law firms in their communities, and use organized people power to push those institutions to uphold democracy. We've all got to learn how to do this better. The first one of those trainings, it's going to be a summer of trainings. The first one of those trainings is on July 16th. On July 17th is the next major national mobilization. The folks at Transformative Justice Coalition are holding this. This falls on the 5-year anniversary of John Lewis's passing, and we're going to be showing up all over the country to show up for the ideals that John Lewis fought his entire life for.
Ezra Levin from Indivisible, who is deep in it right now, along with a lot of people. It's incredible how many folks I encounter who are at those protests this weekend or are going to trainings, doing it. There's a real activation. It's really palpable. Thanks, Ezra. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Still to